And yeah, let me just share my screen on the agenda to kind of get everybody on the same page. And so we're not worried about if we're on track or not. Here is the agenda. Can everybody see that? Simple Word document.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Ken and I will do an intro for the next 10 minutes. And then after that, there'll be a pre-recorded demo for the next 12 minutes. And then I have the finish time on the far right for you if you want to keep track of that. If you want to do a screenshot of this and put it on the side, if you want to make sure that you're keeping us on track, feel free. I'll try to do the same, but I know I'm going to get a little distracted, especially when I'm in the VR space. The third thing is the live guided session. So for 20 minutes or so, Hilmar or Johan will be guiding a live session. Presume a few of us who are ready can jump in at that point, but we're not going to be spending all that much time in that space. And then after we'll not be distracted in two realms of reality and have a Q&A for 15 minutes or so. And that'll bring us to 1 o'clock. And at that point, we'll ask some next steps. Those that want to maybe continue with the cohort that we're forming from this group, we can talk about what that might look like. And then after that point, from basically 1 to 1:30, we'll be just diving back into the space and have a live session, moving things around, kicking stuff, bumping into each other. I'm sure mayhem will happen and lots of learning at the same time. So if you are interested, if you have the headset, certainly use it at that time. If you would like to participate with your mouse and keyboard, that's possible too, or with a mobile device. And Johan and Hilmar will explain all that very soon. If you want to just jump at that point, that's fine as well. If it's boring to watch others play and you don't want to play, that's fine. This will all be recorded and you can see that at a later time. But I do want to just get some commitments at about 1 o'clock or so and see who wants to go forward and interested in joining the cohort. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so you can see faces. And Ken and I will kind of give you an overview of what we're thinking with this group. And first off, I guess, let me introduce Johan. And Johan, I'm not going to say your last name. And Hilmar the same, just so that you can introduce yourselves with your lovely accents. But Johan and Hilmar are two of the founders of Arceus, and they'll tell you all about the history of the company and what their purpose is. I will just say, and Ken jump in as well, that we're hoping that this level of VR is really the next step as far as we see it. Brief history of VR has been that it's been a very lonely place for one person to go in and experience, and mostly just walk through something that's already finished modeled and get the true one-to-one sense that is really the beauty of that space. But now we're at a point where we have multiplayer VR, and we can be in the same space. We can have avatars to understand that we have this shared presence, and being able to take that to even the next level and be able to actually design and model in that space has only been the dream of hackathons in years past, and now I think is becoming quite the reality with what Arceus is doing. So much more to come as we dig in the next 90 minutes. Ken, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I find so exciting about Arceus, I mean, you mentioned the multiplayer, the ability to actually go into a space and design with others in that space. I mean, I think the other aspect is actually being able to design physically or in a space, like rather than having everything abstracted onto like a two-dimensional screen and then having to like use the mouse and constantly be like manipulating 3 dimensions with two-dimensional tools. You're actually able to go into 3 dimensions and manipulate 3 dimensions. So there's something groundbreaking about that, which is really, really exciting. And you know, I'm not an architect myself, but it certainly it gives me a totally different appreciation for the kind of space that you're creating. Like just the ability to look differently at space by being able to go into like the first person and be able to look at that space. So yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like the kind of future of remote collaboration. The idea that you can go into shared space and really feel like, even though something's just an avatar, you really feel like you're communicating and working with somebody else.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're really excited for Hilma and Johan to show us what they got.
Yeah, and this will be a new experience for all of us. And I like to say, like, the first time in some new way of working, like the first time you jump into VR. And maybe I'll ask, if is it anyone's first time today in VR at any point? Never mind what we're doing today, but just in that space. Okay, nobody's first time. Well, that's good, because usually what you'll see is the first time people are just wowed by it, and anything you can do in that space is just amazing. But once you start jumping in, the second, third time, you start to really get comfortable with the space and understand how it's going to be useful in the design process. And much, I like to think about it this way. It's much the same as taking like a physical model, maybe being in the same room or creating some kind of study models or some kind of collaborative model, and then picking it up and having that tactile relationship with it, and then imagining what the space might be like inside. Let's say it's a model of a building, but this is one step better. This is even better than the real thing, to quote YouTube, because you can actually, you'll see, go inside that space, and that space becomes an immersive another space. It's like a space within a space. So you'll see all that. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to connect our brains to what we have been doing with that kind of shared making, to the shared making in VR. So it's at 12:10, and I think we've rambled on just long enough for our time. So I'm going to hand it over to Johan to do the pre-recorded demo, and then you can share your screen, and we're off.
Thanks. Omar, you want to maybe start off by first telling a bit about us?
Just a few things first. First of all, glad to be here. Great to have the opportunity to have a chat with you guys about Arceo and to talk about what we've been doing. I started down this path 4 years ago. And like Ken, I'm not an architect, but I have a great passion for architecture. And before founding Arceo, I did something completely different. I created a toy design app where you could like design toys on an iPad and 3D print them. Sold that to Autodesk and went with Autodesk for 2 years before then jumping into doing Arceo. So it's been quite a while that we've been working on this, and the reason for why it's taken a while is that what we're trying to do is fairly complicated. We basically are trying to create a collaborative design app where people can get together in a shared space and design pass together shapes. It works in VR. It works basically on mobile devices. And we actually built our own modeling kernel to enable all of this to happen. So it's been quite a journey, and we are now at the point where we have like a free beta that everybody can join, and we're looking for feedback. So that's kind of why we're here. And during this session, what we wanted to do is first to show you kind of the pre-recorded demo, just to kind of give you the highlights of how Arceo works. And then after that, we'll be kind of jumping into kind of the live guided session, as Mike mentioned. But yeah, let's just jump into the recording and show people like what Arceo is all about.
Okay, let me share my screen and this video. Now, just tell me if you hear some audio, because then we are good to go.
Hi, and welcome to Arceo. Nowadays, most of our design work is done in 3D.
Can hear the audio.
Okay. Let me.
And Johan, can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Yeah.
Just to let everybody know that if you want to use the chat to record any questions that you have, any things that you see and you're curious about, you can certainly keep notes on scratch paper and just ask the question later. But if you want to put it in the chat, then we can all see that and respond to that at the appropriate time. I also included a link to get your AIA CEU credits, so take advantage of that as well. But yeah, please do add any questions that you see in the next 50 minutes or so, especially. Thanks.
Okay. Let's just play this. If something happens or goes wrong, just let me know. I will stop the
Hi, and welcome to Arceo. Nowadays, most of our design work is done in 3D, but we still use 2D screens when creating these models. We now have technologies to experience our design in 3D using virtual and augmented reality. But when we want to try out something new, we have to go back to our 2D devices. With Arceo, we want to reimagine the architectural design process when not bound by 2D screens, where you can use your hands to model in 3D just like physical model making. We can create geometry, cut into it and distort it, just pick up and glue objects together, and even throw things away. We see Arceo as a 3D tracing paper, where you can rapidly prototype ideas on existing imported 3D contexts like Rhino, SketchUp, and Revit models. Arceus modeling engine is similar to parametric BIM tools like Autodesk Revit. Using our new integration with Revit, you can easily load your latest projects to Arceo, create new volumetric suggestions or sketches that can be exported back as native Revit geometry and masses to continue documenting your design. The fun part is that this can be done from any scale and is fully collaborative, so we can invite others to join us to present or explore new ideas using your existing 3D models. Hi Omar, can you maybe make that tower a bit wider?
Sure, something like this.
Let me move it a bit more to the front. Now let's show you how Arceo works. Context is important when exploring your designs. In Arceo, you can load your site with the built-in map feature and automatically generate 3D buildings from OpenStreetMaps data. Let's move on to the plot next door and show how Arceo works. Creating shapes in Arceo is simple. To create a solid shape, I pull them up, and to create voids, I push them down into the underlying shape. Now the best part is that this is all fully collaborative.
I can even use my hands, no controllers needed. Let me just adjust the shape a little bit.
As I work, you can see how shapes snap to the edges. As I pick up shapes, they also align with other shapes, making working with Arceo even easier than physical model making.
Okay, I'll adjust the height of the building a bit. Why don't you bring in a real Revit model now, Johan?
Sure, let's go to Revit. In Revit, we can easily export a 3D scene to Arceo using our Revit plugin. This allows us to select the level of detail to reduce the amount of polygons for working with models on mobile devices like the Oculus Quest or phones and tablets. Once the model has been successfully exported, you can bring it into Arceo. We also support importing of images, program requirements, and other 3D models. Okay, let's get rid of this building and bring in the Revit model. Here you can see the model available in my library that will be placed on the table using the Revit North coordinates. Once we have imported the Revit model, we can sketch on top of it and explore some new design options.
How about trying to add an extension to the building, maybe over here?
Sure, let me work on that.
It's possible to work in any scale in Arceo. When you want to do more detailed work, you just scale down to a more comfortable size.
Why don't we add some color to the entrance? And maybe skew it a bit to make it more interesting.
Okay, let's go inside.
I think we should add a door here. Let me sketch the opening so we don't forget to add one once everything is loaded back to Revit.
Nice. So where are we now?
We're now standing in the lobby where a new restaurant will be created on the right here. Let me start by creating a wall to separate these spaces. Hilmar, maybe you can get started with the reception desk?
Sure, I'll take care of that. How about something like this? Maybe I'll also add a chair and a lamp to the table.
How about we add a logo to the wall here?
That looks good.
And maybe some chairs over here?
I think we may need to have them on the other side, otherwise they'll be in the way when people walk through the space.
Arceo elements are adjustable once created, so you can make a rough first draft and fine-tune things later. Let me cut an opening here. And maybe add a new window over here.
Okay, that looks good. So because the geometry remains editable, I can make the door opening wider to maybe allow a little bit more light to flow through.
Looks good. Let me add some glass in this window.
I think it's good. It's a winner, Johan.
I see there's a new Revit model available. Let's update all the models in the scene to their latest version. We're now outside again, where I can experience the design at human scale, while Hilmar is creating a new tower. I can also move things around by simply pointing at them. We can easily make copies of objects and offset them to make linear arrays. If I go back to the larger scale and give the tree a slight rotation, I can also make rotational arrays. When using the arrays on RQ volumes, we can make some more interesting shapes.
How about if I cut a white through the top of the tower?
That looks fun, but it might be a bit impractical. Let's get rid of that tower.
One of the main features of Arceo is that you can join a design meeting even if you don't have a VR headset, as Arceo also works on desktop PCs, phones and tablets. Here you can see how a user with an iPad can see everything that's going on inside the meeting as you sculpt the new tower a little bit. Another key feature is that you can add program tags to individual floors and immediately see total area sizes and how close you are to meeting your program requirements. You can also see these updating on the iPad as the tower is being worked on, and even edit program tags on the iPad.
On the iPad, I can easily navigate around the model and communicate design suggestions with the users inside VR using sketches. Note how the area totals change as Hilmar edits the tower in VR. Design options are another powerful feature of Arceo. Simply make a duplicate of the model, try out some other ideas, and toggle back when you want to compare them. It's even possible to create entire towers, move and rotate them around from a non-VR device. And by placing the model on a table in AR, using a phone or tablet, you can see everyone working in the scene and even sketch or model something in AR. Let's jump to human scale inside the building and check out the view. Creating spaces while experiencing them from human scale is really powerful. And these validated spatial objects can be used again once loaded back as native Revit geometry. And of course, we can play with the time of day to get a feel for how the light will flow into that new meeting space.
Why don't we add an apartment here on the top floor?
Sure, let me add some walls here. In Arceo, you can also work with parametric hollow shapes that have a fixed wall thickness. These can be used to quickly prototype out some interior spaces by adding walls and carving new window openings.
I'll just focus on the living room.
Let me erase some of these openings on both sides.
That's easy.
I can also make edits on this volume, and here you can see the constraints at work and how all the geometry is live updated to my edits. This is also possible from corners. As you can see, this is pretty powerful, and I can explore different design ideas without having to redo the modeling. We can also make sections into the building to see what's happening inside our creations. Ah, hi there, Hilmar.
Oh, hey Johan, there you are. I'm just here inside working on my kitchen. What do you think? Maybe I'll add a stove here to the counter as well.
Looking good. Here, let me help you by moving this chair. Once you're happy with your design, we can export the design options to 3D or native Autodesk Revit. Once in Revit, we can use the Arceo plugin to import that scene to generic models or mass families that can be used as a base for facades. You can choose what materials from Arceo to import, and if you want to delete the previous import when loading new proposals. Everything created or loaded in Arceo will be converted to Revit objects aligned with the original model. The volumes in Arceo get converted to native geometry, and Arceo props like trees, people, and furniture get created as native Revit families. Also, the iPad sketches get loaded, and the program data and materials are contained in the geometry. Here we can see the new entrance that can directly be used as a design reference, including a reception and sketch for the missing door. Even custom imported 3D objects, like this chair, will be converted to native Revit families, so they can easily be updated or replaced by other families in your library.
So that brings us to the end of the presentation.
As you can see, Arceo enables you to collaborate easily using any device, which ultimately saves you time, reduces cost and misunderstandings. And our close integration with Revit opens up many interesting ways to collaborate and get work done faster than possible before.
Arceo is currently in free beta, and we'd love to get your feedback. So please sign up at arceo.is and let us know what you think. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
That was so great. Guys, I love your lightsabers too.
The lightsabers.
Thank you.
Yes. So everyone got that well with the sound and the image?
Sounded great.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the next part, we just want to say that obviously Arceo is still in beta. That means that anything can happen, and probably anything and everything will. And we're going to try to do something a bit brave. We're going to basically have a live session inside Arceo, and Johan is going to kind of do like a guided kind of session in there after we talk about some of the basics of how Arceo works. And if you want to join in, and if you have Arceo, you can basically log into a meeting using company ID BSA, and the room name is BSA. And Johan can maybe start by showing you how you log in.
Yeah.
And you can do that both in VR and on the desktop version or the mobile version if you have those available.
So if people don't have the mobile version of the app yet, it's pretty easy to get. Let me just share my screen again.
Johan, can I just ask the group,
Yeah.
how many have a mobile device? How many want to try to do it through the desktop, just so we can get a sense of how we want to participate? Maybe if, I don't know, let's go back to just faces. So just put your little hands up or Zoom hands up if you want to join by mobile.
There were one or two people that joined late too, so I don't know whether anyone else has a headset that they want to try with too.
Okay. I've just admitted a couple of poor souls that were trapped in the lobby. I apologize. This is all recorded, so you can see the awesome demo that was just shown. And you're being recorded now, so watch your language. Anyways, so again, for those that want to start and join this demo through an iPad or an iPhone, raise your hand. Okay, great. Tatiana? All right, great. And then how many want to participate via a mouse and keyboard on their desktop? Okay, quite a few. Okay, excellent.
Okay. Then I will share a link with the installer, and because maybe
I'm going downstairs.
Already.
I know you.
Just
Come here. Okay, good boy.
You want to share a link both to the installer, but also kind of the install URL?
Yeah.
For the mobile versions.
So the mobile version is actually, let me just copy paste that one first. So this link you can go to for the mobile version. So your iPhone, Android phone, tablet, pretty much everything you have laying around near you, you can get to that link on your device and get signed up for the beta there. Then the next link is the installer for Windows.
This is in the chat. stream.
In the chat screen, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a Windows installer, and you need to click some warnings and things away, and then you can install Arceo on your desktop and join in the meeting on the desktop.
Okay. That's great. So that as all of you are doing that on the side, Tatiana, to join through the mobile, how would we do that, Johan?
Yeah. So I'm currently not sharing my screen yet, but let me just fix everything up a bit here because I need to still start the app. Okay. So the app is starting. Let me share my screen.
So the link that you shared for Windows, it does not work with Mac, is that right?
It doesn't work with Mac indeed. So it's just like if you have a Mac, if you can run a virtual desktop or something emulating a Windows environment, that would still work. Otherwise, you're unfortunate that we cannot, we don't support Mac yet.
If you have an iOS device, like even a phone,
Yeah,
you should try it
a
out.
phone
So
or
Arceo works pretty well on a phone even.
Yeah. Also, like this is a pretty big group. We're all going to join in maybe one session. So that's, I'll explain you a bit first about how to mute yourself so we don't interfere too much with the general session. Let me just make a new scene to everyone to start. And then I'll share my screen and how this all works. Okay, here we are. So let's see, we have shared screen, share. So if you're starting the VR-less version of Arceo, so either on your phone or on Windows, it looks like this. You can expand the menu to get all your tools, but for the basics of today's meeting, you can just mostly leave it closed. And this is all we need for looking around and doing things, or the touring around. To join the meeting, we can use, I'll just make myself that menu a bit longer. We can use our company ID BSA and the room name BSA. And as long as you just fill in your own name and use those credentials, we will join the same meeting space. And behind your name, you see a little icon with the mic. You can mute yourself because we hear the audio already from Zoom, so we don't need to hear more audio from Arceo. And I see some people already joining in.
And Johan, that's a good point on the audio too, because obviously we're sharing this through a Zoom meeting, so we're using Zoom audio. Would you imagine, or is it a typical workflow that you would simply enter the space and have all the audio happening in that shared presence? You wouldn't have to have a Zoom meeting for collaboration.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And the meeting ID you send, that's like the more secret you make that, like the meeting itself, like the very complicated name for the meeting, the less likely it is for other people to join in. But now we are having a very open session with BSA, so we just use the same company ID as in the room. And all the audio itself, the settings for audio, I think we don't need it for today, but you can connect here, you can connect your microphone to your active microphone. So I think most of the VR people already joined in. Let me have a quick look around, see how that looks like. So here we are, there's some people floating around. Hi everyone. Everyone, like the devices can see me already, I guess. So on my PC version of Arceo with my VR headset connected, and Hilmar is going to show that later as well, we can also have the VR-less version of the app as well. So I can see both myself in third person as all the other people that joining. But for today's like little tryout, I'm going to be sharing my VR view, and that will just look like this.
Hey,
Now-
Johan.
Hey.
You said it was Arceo, then BSA, right?
Yeah, BSA. Let me open that menu in VR
Ken,
so you can.
It's BSA, BSA.
BSA.
Oh, BSA. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So I don't know if you need to wait a bit more for other people to join in, or maybe
Maybe
just
before you start, just ask, is anybody have any problems with logging in or getting the apps installed?
There we go. Cool.
I'm just launching the app right now, and I'm kind of staring at a black screen. Is that kind of like a restart kind of deal?
Which device are you using it from?
A Quest.
A Quest. If it's the black screen showing an Arceo logo, it's a loading screen, and it should go to the to start the app sooner or later. If you don't see any logo, then maybe you have to restart your device. That doesn't sound like it should be doing.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah. Thanks.
Did you like work with Arceo before, or did you open maybe another model in it, or?
I was just testing out like the default model.
Okay. Let us know if you have problems, then we'll try to troubleshoot you a bit.
Sorry, can I ask you? I'm trying to connect through iPad, and I'm at the point that I need to redeem some
Ken
code
is already
for
sketching some stuff.
Sorry, you were saying, Tatiana?
Ken, you're not
Yeah,
muted yet on the, I see in the list in Arceo.
Hold on. Sorry, go ahead, Tatiana.
You think we're good to go, or?
Johan, can you hear us?
Don't you anymore from Zoom. Let me check what's happening here.
Johan, can you hear us on Zoom?
Hilmar.
Yes, can you hear us?
Oh, don't know why.
We're having audio issues, it seems. Sorry, Tatiana, you were saying that you had to type in some code?
Yeah, so I'm in a test flight, and I'm supposed to have some code. I don't know if I'm in the right place.
So on test flight, basically to install the iOS app, you just need to install the test flight app. Once that is installed, you can go basically to the sign up again and kind of launch the install of Arceo, and then it should show up inside test flight.
Okay, thanks.
Johan, did we lose you? Do we have audio on you? Johan?
That's 1, 2.
Yep, can you hear you? But we lost you there before.
Yeah, I think it's the Arceo mic somehow stole my headset mic, so I'm now using my webcam. Is that still loud and clear for people to hear?
Yep.
Okay.
So you want to go ahead, Johan, with some of the basics of like the Arceo UI to get people familiar with that?
Yeah. So let me just close that list, and I'm going
you need
to
go into your VR view.
Hmm?
You need to go into your VR camera view.
You're not seeing my screen yet. Sorry. You should see it
There you
now.
go. Yep.
So I will clear out the 3D scene with the little games that people are playing.
People are already playing tic-tac-toe.
Yes. So I will start a new scene, and then we'll like everyone can follow along in their own little space if they want. We're just going to show you how to show the menu and work with switching between tools and the basics of interaction.
Like the menu is very easy to show. You rotate your left wrist towards you. It shows the menu like a tool palette. And if you rotate it away, it hides it. And you can also do that on your right hand, and that will show the menu in front of you as a fixed in place object. And the menu is actually, you can drag it and pick it up. You can put it where it's comfortable. And that menu will dock normally on your wristband, but you can always just make it visible and hide it by just rotating your wrist like this. For switching between tools, it's very easy. You can just hover on the object you want to, the tool you want to select. It shows a little tooltip. You can click on it with your index finger, and it selects a different tool. And then you would place a different prop, for example. Or you could move an object. I think there's the table somehow got inverse. So let me just do that a bit. Okay.
Already breaking things, Johan.
No, it's not me. So using your menu, you can either show it in front of you. There's also a quick menu. When you press one of the buttons under your thumb, if you're using a 5, it's the menu button. If you press it, it's in the quick selection mode, and you can hover any of the tools with your laser, and it will automatically select that tool for you. So I can select the delete tool and delete the tree that Ken is working on. Or I can select the sketch tool and sketch something. Just quickly switching between the tools. If you want to just not have that menu disappear, you just drag it somewhere in the scene and you can place it where it's comfortable to work with your index finger. Then the basics of interacting with Arceo, all of your interactions are done with your index finger, your trigger fingers. So you can create geometry. Just make a new scene. You can create geometry, and you can create more geometry by just pressing your index finger while you're with the cube selected. And if you're pressing the shape inside of the other shape, it's going to make a void instead of a solid shape. So where you start is determining where you start the shape, and then you just press it in the other shape to make a void shape. And all the objects that got created in Arceo, even the tree, we can interact with it by just reaching into the object using your interaction point. You see a small little dot in front of your controller. That's the interaction point. And you can use that to stretch your geometry, to make edits to the sub features in the geometry, maybe even solid like that. Or you can pick up and smash it to other objects like this.
So Johan, do you want to give me control maybe of the camera so I can show them some of the VRLS things?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just share my screen here. Okay, so everybody can see my view here on the desktop. So basically what we have here is my desktop version. It looks the same on my phone and on my iPad. As Johan said before, we have this tool palette here up on top of the screen that you can expand or minimize. And the idea is that you kind of use it like this in a minimized mode if you're more kind of viewing what's going on in the scene. Or if you want to start to interact, you can expand it fully. On a desktop, if you want to navigate around, I can hold down my scroll wheel on my mouse to kind of pan the model. I can hold down the right mouse button to orbit around. And then I use the scrolling to zoom in and out. We have here in the bottom left a few buttons as well. So there's a views button, so I can go to the front of the table or the back or the top. I can actually teleport down to the ground, even in the desktop version. And now I'm standing here on the ground in human scale, either kind of looking around with my camera control here in the lower right corner, or even kind of just walking here with my D-pad in the lower left corner. I can also go into my orbit mode, and then I can just click anywhere on the screen to rotate, essentially. And then just kind of zoom out, and then I'm here. And just like in VR, I can start to sketch on the model using my iPad version or my desktop version. I can even create new towers or shapes just by kind of clicking and dragging them out. And you see as I do that, I'm only dragging the shape along kind of 2 axes. If I'm on the desktop version, I can toggle axes by clicking the right mouse button, and then I start extruding. And if I'm doing this on a touch device, I basically tap the screen to toggle the axis. So with like a second finger. So you drag with like 1 finger and you tap the axis toggle and you change the axis. So even on the desktop version, I can create some pretty complex geometry. I can go into my edit tool, edit the shape. I can pick it up, move it around, toggle the axis, delete it, or I can go into my create tool and even go into my trees and you start planting trees in the scene. So we have most of the functionality that's available in the VR version available also in the mobile version and the desktop version. These controls up here allow you to toggle between models, go into meetings, or even go into my map and type in some address, maybe for Boston. And I toggled the map on for Boston. So Johan, do you want to maybe jump into the site that you had planned and do a quick design session?
Okay. Maybe it's still good to explain about the navigation in VR. If you're joining from VR, there's 2 buttons on the side of the controller, the red ones. If you press one of them, you're grabbing the world. If you press 2 of them at the same time, you're scaling yourself up and down. So if you want to get closer or like in a bigger scale, you just move your hands towards you while pressing those buttons on the side. And the joystick on the right controller forward, that's teleporting around, and you can teleport down to the human scale if you're teleporting on top of the 3D model, and you can teleport to the God scale or like the big scale if you teleport above your head. So I think someone just gathered every user to the same spot. That's another feature we can talk about later. If you want to give a tour to people like we're doing now, we can gather all the people around us using the multi-user panel.
Maybe, Johan, before we start that session, there's somebody that should, or is not muted. There's a bit of an echo that we hear.
Oh, I think there's most of the people are muted. There's 2 people that are not muted. A guest.
S. Spencer and guest is not muted.
Yeah. Do you hear the echo?
And Ken, mute yourself.
In the meantime, I'll just prepare that.
Yep, let's jump into the Boston scene.
Okay. So I think we're all pretty far away now, but let me just gather all of you around me when watching this. So I'm now just sending a follow you to me, so everyone would be around me in this scale. And what we're seeing here is that the map feature that we have with OpenStreetMap's data from Boston. Don't know the exact neighborhood, you guys probably know better. So what we did here is we just stretched the table a bit to give more space for the buildings, and that will generate more 3D buildings. And we loaded in the middle of this building you see here, we loaded a building that we made in Arceus, exported back to Revit, applied curtain walls to the mass and like mass floors, and we loaded that back into Arceo. So this is a model as a reference. You can use Arceo to make a massing, get that into Revit as like a design reference, and use that to generate the subcomponents. And you can draw things on that model. So we can draw like sketches, for example, when we're doing this from the iPad, or you can make 3D components on that object, and that can then be loaded back into Revit. But should we talk a bit about the basics of snapping, Hilmar, or the basics of props and placing things?
Johan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm in VR with my headset, and I can see the map and all the geometry. When I'm looking through my desktop, I only see the building that you brought in without the map or the adjacent geometry.
Okay.
What's wrong with my desktop?
So you're in with two devices, and the desktop doesn't see the map.
Yeah. What about others who are on the desktop? Can you see all of the massing that you see on the shared screen in Zoom?
No, you can't see it on desktop.
Okay. So let me do one thing. I'm going to refresh the screen by duplicating this model. Let me know if you now see something.
I see two palm trees that are enormous.
Big palm trees. So what I will do is I'll make this one from scratch. And we'll just see the problem, maybe because we never tried with this many users in the same session. Oop, and somewhere under the table, let me just teleport all of you guys to here again. So I'm going to load that Boston map. I'm going to turn on the 3D buildings. Do you guys see 3D buildings? Let me hear anyone anymore. I hope you guys still hear me.
Not on the desktop version.
Not on the desktop version. Hilmar, you're still seeing it, right?
Yep, I'm in the desktop version and I'm seeing it.
So there might be like a communication issue with the server collecting the data.
My mobile version did have a cloud icon for a little while, but then it all loaded in.
Now?
So Mike, you logged into the same meeting, the BSA meeting?
I'm on mute because I think I'm causing some echo with multiple devices. But as far as I'm concerned, well, on my desktop version, I don't see any buildings still, but maybe others do. Can somebody else unmute and let us know what you see?
I
see them now.
Okay.
I didn't before, then after it was refreshed, and then I didn't see them. And now I see them again.
So
I have consistently seen the buildings on desktop version.
Okay. So we're all having some separate issues, and mine may be related to my Wi-Fi and the fact that I'm streaming it twice.
Yeah.
I just want to keep an eye on time because we are essentially on time, just a few minutes over, and we can spend a lot more time after 1 o'clock in this space, kicking around too. But we were hoping to get in some Q&A, and we can easily get into a rabbit hole and get distracted into this wonderful space.
Yes.
So what would you like to do, Johan, at this point?
Hilmar, what do you think? Shall we quickly go to Q&A and join, maybe try to do a little design challenge after the Q&A?
I think it would be good to do the Q&A so we can answer what are probably many questions people have.
Yes.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay. So I'll leave the session running, but I'll just refresh with a new scene. Or actually, I see people still nothing. I will just leave them.
So that was interesting. I think we've never had so many people live in Arceo trying to do something like that. So definitely a few issues, but great to see how many people are able to join.
With so many different devices too.
Yeah. So, how do you guys want to do the Q&A?
Well, I could certainly just ask for those that are their first time in the Arceo space, just to share what your immediate feelings are. And if no one steps up, I'll just point to somebody on the screen randomly.
So hi everyone. I think I'm just going to kind of jump in here real quick. I'm part of Sasaki. I've been actually working with Arceo testing and going through a lot of the stuff. And my background's in architecture. And I kind of just wanted to say something. I have to jump off in like 5 minutes, so sorry for the doorknob comment. But for the last couple of years, we've been really trying to challenge how we integrate VR and Arceo together. It's also like with design and different types of phasing, like planning and urban design and landscape. So we've been really kind of challenged to figure out how we could connect all these two. And it's, there's a lot of, there's, like you saw, there's a lot of pain points towards getting people inside the headset and in there. But for like, once you're able to kind of go through and get through some of those things, like you're able to really start to get into a new type of design world. And like, it's not the same idea of like, oh, now you have Rhino in VR, that already kind of exists, and it's not really beneficial as a VR tool. But as a platform, as Arceo, is like you're really kind of sketching and designing and thinking together. And for the teams that we have been like engaging and trying to deploy like 4 or 5 different headsets and having everyone come together, this is like this type of like pain right here is something we experience like almost all the time. But it's like that new thing of like, what headset do I use? How do I set things up? There's a lot of new stuff. So like, I think embrace that a little bit if you're like really excited about Arceo. And I've really loved what I've been able to do with it. And like it's like, it really makes you think a little bit differently as in 3 dimensions. And the workflow that you can start to really think about how you can integrate it back into your own workflow. Like we've tested out ways to import it back into Rhino, import it and like have some of this programmatic stuff kind of feed back in, and you don't need to be like some coder or hacker to get into this. So it's, right now we use it for design review a lot, just because people are still getting their VR legs. And it's not easy. You get sick kind of quickly, and like retention time is a big issue for us. So I definitely want to encourage anyone, please feel free to reach out, or like if you have any questions or just want to chat about VR, I'll leave my email in the bottom, but just wanted to say that before I had to head out. But sorry about the quick cutoff.
No, that's terrific, David. And before you head out, let me just ask you, as I'm asking others too, would you like to be involved with the cohort after this event?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Smaller group, excellent. And we have some others that have been using it too for a while. So it'd be great to rely on you, more expert users, as the rest of us get through some of the growing pains and get into the space. Yeah. So one question about your use, because this is a new tool that's in the toolbox that designers have access to. This is not going to be the only tool in the future. Maybe Johan and Hilmar, you hate to hear that. It may be a tool that's maybe the go-to. Of course, it requires electricity and Wi-Fi, so we know the fragility of that. But as a designer, you have everything from Arceo down to the pencil, let's say. But let me ask you the specific question: as you're approaching something to design something, is there ever a time when you're thinking, okay, great, what's my next move? Am I going to create a physical model? Am I going to do a hand sketch? Am I going to jump into Rhino or jump into Arceo? Is Arceo one of those tools where you just think, okay, I want to, I'm on the road, I want to jump into Arceo and I can't. Do you find like a usefulness for its platform yet? Is it itself a reason to grab that tool, or are you still just finding out which tools are best for which design exercise?
That's a great question. I think there's always that pain of like trying to understand how you get a tool to work for you and not let it design what you're thinking. Exactly. And I think that takes like, that takes not only learning the skill set, but the motions and like how to manipulate it for yourself. So I think I'm getting to that point where I can be like, oh, I know how to use Arceo to leverage, like I know how to leverage Arceo for like the work. And I think the times that we've been finding it as a good moment is like you know, we've been finding is the easiest way to share and collaborate. And so I know when like we're doing design reviews, we've written like, we have a little C# thing in, or just a little Grasshopper node that will say like, okay, take this model and send it into the Arceo import folder. And so that automatically makes it so it's set up and then someone just sets up a meeting and we can all jump in. So that part at least gets us there, and then we can all start tinkering around. So there really, it hasn't been that point of like, oh, I know I need to design something in one, like at a like 1-to-1 scale, and it's going to be a doorway, and I know how to detail these things. It's more like I'm just getting content in there and then building off of that. Because I think that's the hardest thing is like is starting with a blank piece of paper and then trying to integrate that blank piece of paper into the huge CD set that you already have. So yeah, that would be my very long, short-winded answer.
That's a great answer, though.
But yeah, but I'm on that note, I'm going to sort of disappear into the dogs. But it was very nice to see everyone. Arceo, like I very much for Arceo. So you know, I'll see you at the next meeting. But I'll see you guys later.
Excellent.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, so let me ask, maybe I'll just start the questions. If others have questions of the founders, please override my questions. But I'll start with the premise that Ken and I had put forth when we invited you all to this, that might this be not just a new tool that we're looking at, but might this be a new solution for the present situation we find ourselves in with remote working and with all of the things that we've gotten better used to, like Zoom and Teams and all other tools that maybe we're using a little bit that we're now relying on much more. And what have been your experiences in the last half a year or so with trying to connect and collaborate? Of course, using Revit in a collaborative way is probably a given in most of our offices. But for the kinds of interoperability, the kinds of ideation and quick design exploration, are you finding that this tool might be an answer to our present reality? Who wants to jump in and answer that?
I mean, I'll go in and just give a little bit of 2 cents to that. One thing I found is professionally, we've been using VR to interface with clients. And in a lot of ways, that's a lot of times whenever the client's like a little skittish, that ends up happening. You're in the pilot seat and they see what you see. Right. And even that alone is an invaluable tool. But what I've already seen through Arceo is that that client interface like gives you those editing tools that like we really need to have. So it's I think this is already said earlier that in terms of like a design tool internally, it's convenient, but the collaborative aspect is invaluable. So
I was excited to actually not want to concentrate on my Zoom layout and rather focus more on the VR layout in that space. Zoom fatigue is very real, right? And it was enjoyable, right? I was on my desktop using my mouse, kind of moving things around. I also tried out a tablet, Wacom tablet, to interface with it. And I could imagine also the movement, right? The activity in that space is very helpful as, yes, new, but also alternative way of interacting. And that to me was the thing I liked the most. There were some interesting things, like I didn't know who exactly I was working with, right? Like, and that was maybe getting used to the tool. I do like the way we're representing people. It's this weird scaled environment. But again, going back to this idea that it wasn't just what we're doing right now, looking at faces, right? It was different, it was active.
I have to apologize. I did something awful at the very beginning when we were in the space, because as Johan was talking, I modeled something and then somebody started modeling on my model and I realized we're not listening to Johan. So I picked it up and I threw it. So whoever that was co-modeling with me, I apologize for that moment. There's probably to that point a whole lot of etiquette rules you'll have to learn, and seeing the avatars, like you're saying, Peter, and not knowing who the people are. Those are probably some of the things that will become interesting. Yeah. And to that point, I wonder with the avatars, Johan and Hilma, are you considering some more customization of personalizing the avatars beyond simply colors?
a good question, and we thought about that a lot, because on the one hand, we want to keep it fairly abstract so people aren't too occupied with like how they look in the space. On the other hand, people kind of maybe want to be more recognizable. So eventually, I think we'll move to providing more customization options to those, kind of down the road. It's not in the near-term future, I have to say. But if you look at what's like going on with more kind of live like avatars, what Oculus is doing, people like Spatial, I mean, it's kind of trending in that direction that you will have that option at least to be more like yourself in the space.
Can the meeting host have user permissions so that you're not necessarily co-modeling on the same thing? Or I found myself messing up other people's things as well. Can the meeting host set that permissions for different users?
So basically, that is something that is on the near-term roadmap, and what we have been doing so far, just to kind of give you a bit of context, is we want to get the app to kind of the feature readiness stage, not so that it's saying that it's now kind of fully bug-free, but we have kind of most of the features that we want. And we are practically at that point, or will be with the next release coming out in November. And then what we will start to do after that is to add more of these controls, kind of so you can control who can do what in meetings, who can be an editor, who can be a viewer only, and so on. So that's kind of a layer we'll add on top of the feature set in the next few months. We basically, this was kind of one of the largest kind of sessions we've done, and obviously not everything worked necessarily as planned. But we found that if we basically kind of limit the interaction to 4, 5, 6 people, and people aren't kind of modeling on each other's shapes, that actually things can work out really well. But we'll be putting in those controls. Is kind of the main answer.
I would imagine, Hilmar, that most collaborative design ventures would probably not be a gigantic group anyways. Most of the more effective groups will be smaller. I love you've thought out so many things like design options and being able to scroll through different rooms and all that. And I'm sure some of the rules would just be made up by whatever team is engaging. Like, for instance, I'm going to work on my side of the table. You're going to work on yours. We can talk to each other about what we're exploring, and maybe then start to mesh some ideas together, so that those team dynamics might define their own rules too, and it wouldn't just be all on the software to pick and choose which menu of ways you want to work. I think as creatives, we're trying to find ways of working together with whatever tools we have. So it's not all on you, but certainly I think giving you some feedback would help you to make the tool more useful, more than it already is. It's just amazing. So with a few minutes left for Q&A, and we can go maybe another 5 minutes or so with on-screen Q&A, I would advise others, because you probably have at least 10 questions each, and that's a lot of questions. So start typing them in the chat, and certainly if anybody has any questions that they want to raise or answer with our live faces, we'll do that. But I'd like to have lots of questions in the chat so I can cut and paste them at the end, and we can use that going forward for the cohort to see what our next steps might be, and to align everybody, have a good kind of starting point on the race, so to speak. So please add those, and I can pick some questions, or Hilmar and Johan, feel free to pick whichever questions or Ken are useful for this discussion. So Johan and Hilmar, maybe I'll ask you to ask the next question, because I'm sure you have many for us users.
Actually, before we do that, I saw somebody was asking about how long we'll be in beta. And the answer is we'll still be in beta for a few months. I mean, probably we'll be going kind of launching our first commercial version sometime during the first half of 2021. And really kind of what we'd love to get from this group is more feedback on what we already have, what do you feel is working well, what do you feel is not working well, and how Arceo basically fits into your workflow, because we've been doing a lot of emphasis on making Arceo part of the workflow. So we'd love to kind of hear of real world examples of, I tried to do this and it worked great, or it did not work great, and just getting brutally honest feedback.
Great. So what specific questions do you have for us newbies in the space? or how we might use this in our workflow. Any targeted questions for us?
Maybe like a question for like the typical design threads and the work that you do now remotely. What's like, do you see or like tools like Arceus being used on like in a VR-less way, or where do you see the most use of a tool like Arceus in the current sessions?
Feel free to point to some, maybe Josephine?
I just unmuted myself because I was going to ask a question. That's funny. Perfect timing. Do you see that like within firms that you're purchasing headsets for a lot of people now? Like we have a couple in our office and we started doing the VR stuff prior to the whole, quarantine 7-month period we've been in, and we haven't bought any more. And we're just thinking, how is this going to proceed in the future? People are not going to want to use each other's headsets. So are we going to be buying more? How's the whole VR thing going to work? So that's just one thought right now, because the desktop version obviously is working well. And I'm sure there's quite a few people in our office setting anyway that would want to stick with the desktop version, but I would see that we'd probably want to get more headsets if we were going to move forward with something like this.
So I think
so just maybe some thoughts on what, on how
you
you guys are operating
that.
with, or who you've been working with so far.
So we've been in touch with quite some organizations that are of bigger scale and like, for example, universities, and they all have that problem right now as well, with having to be forced to work remotely and being a bit afraid of sharing the headsets. So often what we recommend people to do now is look into these standalone headsets like the Oculus Quest 2 that just got released, because these are only $300 per device. And Arceus runs on these. So like, you can just give them to a group of people that are very tech savvy, that are most likely going to use it. And then those people are able to join those sessions in VR, and other people can still join with their iPads or the non-VR devices and be part of that session as well. So you can still have that kind of interaction with people that are VR haters and VR lovers in the same space.
To build on that point too, I know that VR has come a long way in the last decade, especially, and some people still get sick because of the refresh rate. I have the Oculus, not the Quest, not the Quest 2, and it's head and shoulders way beyond anything that I've used prior, rivaling the what's the Oculus that just got canceled? The
Rift S.
The Rift.
This one.
Right. So the Rift is no longer. Oculus 2 is here. I assume Oculus 2 is maybe as good or getting close to the Rift, and then we'll go after that. What am I asking? I guess I'm asking, do you predict a time when everybody can use this tool and overcome some of the sickness, especially if you have it on for like a half an hour, an hour?
I think the most important there also is the like the expectations we have of the hardware, because these are already a lot better than the Quest 1 that you have. Like this one is twice as powerful, so it can run at higher frame rates, and these frame rates, they are the most important for getting a comfortable VR experience. There's also some other things like we still have to do some of those as well. Like there's some comfort things you can do in the application when you're moving around, or when you're doing like movement related things, that you're having some comfort options of like focusing your view and having a cage around you. So like it also depends which application you're using or game, how intense that thing will be to your brain. And some people are more sensitive to it than others, but ideally, when you're loading in not too crazy big 3D models that the device should be able to handle, Arceus should be a comfortable experience for people, and especially if we add those comfort options to the app later on.
So Mike, one question. We have quite a lot of questions like on the chat. Should we spend time on those instead of going back to Arceo? I mean, we can do a follow-on Arceo session with people separately later on. I mean, we're available anytime.
Sure.
Should it take like 10, 15 minutes to kind of scroll through those questions?
Yeah, sure. And why don't you pick any questions up that you think are most relevant to answer with this current group?
Yep. So there's a good question on like importing multiple Revit projects. Obviously, that's been a big focus for us to basically integrate Arceo with Revit. So the question, and this is probably best for Johan, is he's a resident Revit expert.
Yes. So what we decided to do now for the workflow of replacing the models and replacing your Revit model on the table is like when you're loading a new Revit model, it's replacing the old one in the scene. When you're making like when you're working on top of a model, you don't want to move that model. You don't want to accidentally move it around or do anything with that. So we lock that model in place on the table, but we also have the ability to load your own 3D components like chairs or trees or people or buildings, and then you can move them around. So in that way, if you would load it like that, you would have the ability to load several Revit projects. What we recommend now to do is you use your master Revit file with all the links in that file and export that one to Arceo, and then you have everything in there in one scene that you can draw on.
I see a question related to that about the size of the Revit model. Does it matter the polygon limitations on imports?
It's very important actually. Like it's especially if you want to run it on your smartphone or on these portable headsets. You want to keep the polygons lower. Like these ones, I think we now have the Quest one. We limited that one to 500,000 polygons. So if you want to go over that number, the experience in Arceo will not be, like in any app, will not be great because the frame rates will be not refreshing fast enough. So your mind will get confused quite fast.
And Johan, that was my question. Is that the full model or per import? You're saying the full model is 500,000 polygons?
Yeah, like we limit it per import now because we expect people to not load several instances of 500,000 polygons, but like that's something we need to make smarter down the road, that we just at one point start LODing the geometry or do something smart with what we show and what we don't show for the device.
And then of course, like the key thing with the Revit integration is that anything you add on top of the model inside Arceo, whatever massing or props you place, whatever program basically kind of assignments you do, that all flows back into Revit as native geometry, as generic shapes, or as like native Revit masses.
Mm-hmm. Which is incredible in itself. I love the fact that you showed that one tower that was twisting upon itself so easily, and to be able to do that easily in any of the other modeling tools that require a lot more coding. This was just very intuitive. To that point, how much control, it was very sketchy and quick, but how much control if you want to make that exactly 15.25 degrees?
And you need to build some helper objects. So like you do in SketchUp when you're making like little helper lines, or like doing in Rhino for making like your outlines for your loft. In Arceo, you can also make temporary objects that you skew or make to the exact dimensions, and then you use those as a reference. But we need to build better tools to make that easier to use, like a ruler or something that make that even easier.
Great. Well, it's a little after 1:15, and if we end at 1:30, I want to give some time to get back into the space. You said you have a design exercise that we can do, and I'll say that I have a little bit more time past 1:30 if we want to stay in the space and kind of wrap up or talk within the space. But I do want to mention for those that do want to jump, but right now, but possibly are interested in joining the cohort and may not have access to hardware. Join the cohort. Let's see how many people we have. We'll work through the BSA. We'll see if we can get maybe some kind of fund going so that we could purchase some devices or share some devices. We'll figure out those logistics at a later point. but don't let the ability that you don't have a headset limit you if you're truly interested and truly committed into joining this. And we will limit the cohort at some point if we have way too many people that want to jump in. But again, we'll work through those logistics later. But don't let any of that hold you up if you are truly interested in diving in. So with that, do we want to jump into another, get back to the same space and or give us some kind of challenge?
So maybe just before we do that, just 2 or 3 more questions that I will just fire off rapid answers to.
Sounds good.
Just to kind of wrap this up. So basically, there's a question, is there a slideshow plugin, like to upload PDF slides? We currently support the videos. We don't have like a slideshow component yet, but that's a good consideration, I think, for the future. Is it possible to have multiple work tables? Well, Cam Simcoe is asking. That's definitely something for the future roadmap. We decided to limit it to 1 for now, but we basically see a future scenario where you would have multiple tables, especially if you think about it in like an AR setting where you have people with AR headsets and you have kind of multiple like Arceus models sitting around the same office. So then you would have multiple like virtual tables in a way. Here's an interesting one. Can you drop a person so that they're standing on the surface in Arceus instead of hovering? So you have to have them like fall down with gravity. That's a request we often get. We haven't done that yet. Might be interesting to experience that. Some people might get a little bit scared. I don't know. Do you have a channel for bug reports and feedback? So we have basically some forums on our website, but we also invite people to send us any feedback you have to beta@arceo.is, and like just let us know any feedback you have, and we're also happy to jump into like a one-on-one session inside Arceo, you know, to get that same feedback. There's one question about like creating cylinders and more complex shapes. Maybe it's good to kind of to end on that. So we've basically been focusing on making the core kind of geometry modeling stable with the basic primitives we have, like we have the cube and kind of the prism shape. I have to say that, you know, the modeling engine we have done will enable a lot more than what you see today. What you're seeing today is kind of the tip of the iceberg. But we want to kind of get those basic shapes and basic primitives working properly before we add more. But on the kind of the near-term roadmap, kind of like next year, we are talking about starting to add more things, more complex shapes, components here that you can build yourself and share between yourself, and so on and so forth. So what we have now is just kind of the very start of something that will be much more expansive in terms of functionality.
This is great. I'll copy all of these questions and send them to you so we can get some written answers. And thank you for answering those very important ones today and on this recording. And any future questions, we'll just keep asking them in the cohort, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a really good connection between us. If you haven't mentioned it and it hasn't been figured out, that Johan and Hilmar are not in the US, but they're in Iceland. And again, I want to thank you especially for spanning the time, spanning the ability to share different time zones is what I'm trying to say, to accommodate meeting with all of us. So let's continue. We'll jump back into the space. And again, those that want to reconnect after, please reach out to me and Ken, and we'll get something started. But I'm eager to jump back into the space. So yeah, lead us back in there, guys.
Let's go ahead. Take it away, Johan.
So should I share my screen, or you want to share and be the spectator?
No, why don't you start by sharing your screen?
Okay.
We'll see how that goes.
So I think I'm still in that meeting. That's interesting. Hey, there's still people. Everyone's still there. So I'm going to just maybe reset this page. So we are up for the clean start. And let's just know, or let me know if you're seeing the preloaded buildings this time. If people are joining with the desktop. So I need to make my VR camera. Yep. So can everyone see the 3D buildings of Boston this time?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so we have what we prepared for a little design session here is I cleared out some sites. It's a clear feature in the map feature. We can clear out existing generated buildings, and we can use that to create new designs. What we can do with this little charrette with us in here is we can form teams. Maybe let's see how many people we have. Maybe teams of 4. So maybe 4 people just gather down here, and 4 people gather down here, and we can make 2 towers, and we just have a little design battle with 2 towers. So if 4 people can gather here, and 4 people can gather around here. So just teleport using your right joystick down forward. You can follow, make teams. Just teleporting down here and teleporting down here. There's people still lost. Ah, I see those.
Johan, maybe I'll take over and share my my screen so it's a bit more stable.
I think for people.
Yeah, just if you allow me to present.
I'll just focus on the camera and wave to the.
Yeah.
Okay, so
okay,
there we are. So let's just make ourselves a bit tinier, so you can use your grips on the sides to make yourself like 1 to 200 or 1 to 100, so we are not too big in each other's face. And we're just going to make a tower over here, and we can build once we have some geometry, we can build on top of that geometry new geometry like voids or solid spaces to make the tower design. And when we're doing this with multiple people, of course, we have to avoid not all touching the same thing at the same time, but we can draw things on top of it while other people are still adding geometry as well. So we can start with a primitive shape, and we can just add new geometry and shapes to it to make a design. I see someone here over here is already making floors, so that's good. Let me just make some entrance here and make it like this. So I think I'm going for maybe a slightly more adventurous tower here. So is anyone having problems with navigating around or moving around? I don't hear anyone. Zoom still working? Yeah. Come on.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I see some people are working on the other side of the car. Let me just have a look here. Hi, Greg. You're making a little canopy here.
Let me jump to the ground and check that out as well. Whoops.
Okay. Okay. So maybe a good thing to mention, like we are we're currently in beta, but what we do is we make backups of whatever we're doing every 2 minutes. So we can, if things go wrong or we want to, like we did the design meeting, we need to go back in time, we can actually recover some of the models and go back in time to get them. Go place to freeze.
It's actually me using my desktop version.
That was you?
Yeah, I'm starting to join in.
Okay. Just
you're stretching geometry with your hands in, like you could have that solid space, the solid objects or the void objects. You can reach into the features and you can stretch and distort them. So you're not only limited to the cube shape, you can make any hexagonal shape using your hand edit. And especially thinking a bit in Revit masses and terms, like this is very hard to do in a meshing environment in Revit. And this will be native Revit masses when you go back to Revit. You can use them.
Johan, do you want to show maybe creating stacks to show how we basically can create towers with floors and maybe add a few programs?
Yeah, so you're seeing me, right? Let me just move to the park and some more space. So using the interface, normally we have on our wristband, we show what mode we're in. So if you're using the move tool, for example, you can switch between moving and copying or duplicating things. If you're using the create tool, we can switch between normal shape that's not cut and split, or a split one. And then when I do that, we create shapes. It's going to be creating individual floors of fixed floor heights. So right now we choose the default 10 feet. If you set your F to feet, you can do that, by the way, in settings. So if you see the menu, there's on the bottom, there's an expandable drawer with settings. You can set your F to feet there. Our default floor height is 10 feet, and we can change it there to other heights. And when you're working with geometry that's connected, like the space that I made here is connected floors. When I stretch one of them, it will stretch all of them at once. If I rotate or twist my controller while I'm editing that, I can either edit only the top of the shape by twisting inwards, or only select one of the shapes by twisting with my wrist down. So you can, if you don't want to move the entire shape parametrically, you just twist your controller and use only the top of the individual cells.
Just like Johan was creating this kind of tower with all of these individual floors, you can even do the same thing on the desktop. So if I go into my create tool and select my cube shape, you can see these toggles here on the right. So even here on the desktop version, I can create a tower with multiple floors, as you can see, and kind of carve into that, just like Johan is doing in VR.
Putting shapes.
Sorry, Mike, you had a question?
A question was just as I'm looking back at the Zoom screen and realize it's coming up to 1:30, so I'm going to stop the recording shortly. But the question I have for you is, when creating like this, a demo that we can see you and Johan creating some things, is it possible also in that demo to see the menu that we all see when we're in VR, so that you can see what's being selected and then what you're connecting to and so forth?
Currently, you only see that from the camera of the user, like that has that UI. So we don't have the capability yet to present that UI to others, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe if there's another channel for what that looks like. I'm just getting more used to the menu, and after a while it just becomes second nature, I'm sure. But I'm just thinking for newcomers, it might be good to be able to have that connection between what's being selected on the menu and what the UI and what we're seeing in the finished model.
Yeah. No, definitely, it'll be good for kind of demonstration purposes to be able to do that. No question.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, for those watching this recording, I'll end it now. And for those that are playing or exploring in the space, we'll keep it open and exploring for a bit more. And again, just as another ask for the cohort, if you're interested after seeing this recording and joining, then reach out to Ken or myself. And again, I just want to thank everyone that joined us today, and thank Hilmar and Johan especially for showing us this amazing new tool.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks, everyone.
So I think there's also